Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody today to the Now and Then podcast. Today we're going to be talking a little bit with Ron Almberg, who is a realtor with Keller Williams. He's been in the business quite a while. So welcome to the Now and Then podcast, Ron.
Well, thank you, Dan. It's great being here. It's good seeing you again.
Yeah, you too. So let's start right off the bat here. If you could just tell us a little bit about your background, what led you to become a realtor, and was there an actual aha moment when you knew that you were meant to be a realtor?
My dad was in construction, so I don't think that's an unfamiliar story for some realtors. My dad was building homes in the Seattle area, and then later on went into more commercial construction. He worked for a big international company called Bach Construction Company. Was a superintendent for them, and so my early years are walking building sites, helping my dad on the weekends, things like that. And then, of course, always growing up, he was always had some kind of side job he was doing too, whether it was roofing or putting somebody's deck on, or a couple repairing floors underneath the houses. And so, anyway, that was a great experience growing up. I do remember one day standing calf deep in concrete, deciding that I wasn't going to do this for the rest of my life. I was going to do something with my head, not my back.
There you go.
And through a weird series of events that I won't get into, I ended up actually in pastoral ministry for 25 years. And then back in 2008, left that and just wanted to do something different. And of course, that's when the market crashed. I couldn't even get a job to save my life for 2 years. I mean, I literally applied everywhere. And really going into real estate had always been kind of in the back of my mind, mainly because of my background. And I always had interest in real estate. My parents had bought and sold homes and had done very well buying properties and stuff like that. So it was kind of out of desperation, really, that in 2009, I just decided to take the real estate courses and was invited by Mike Alvarez, who was, at that time, was GMAC. They had a lending side and a real estate side. So, that went away after the market crashed. But anyway, that's where I got started and took off from there. He was a great designated broker to be underneath because he was a real stickler about contracts and knowing real estate contracts and having your files real clean. So it wasn't really like an aha moment for me. It was more like I wanted to do something. And I wanted to be able to have a career that, I had unlimited potential to be able to earn money and also opportunities for investing, but also somewhat of a flexible schedule. That's a joke in real estate because you end up working 24/7, which my wife jokingly says that I went from a pastoral career where I was constantly on call to a real estate career where I'm constantly on call. So, that's how I got started. And then, of course, my first year in 2010, a lot of things were changing in the industry. And then in 2012, things started taking off from there, and it was pretty incredible. It's been a great experience, and I've really enjoyed it.
Okay, so there may not have been an aha moment, but was there a moment when you knew you'd made the right choice? Probably when you got that first fat check, right?
Well, it's kind of funny because back then, I think the average list price was like $180,000.
Right, right, yeah. So those fat checks weren't quite so fat, were they?
They weren't very fat, and they didn't go very far. Back then I would have had to sell 3 houses to equal 1 house today, right? Because our average list price is over $400,000. But for me, And probably goes back to just my career as a pastor, but also just I think this is kind of how I'm wired. Just the joy of helping people navigate the whole process of uh, either buying or selling property and problem solving the things that come up during that whole thing, whether that's contractual problems or problems on the other side with the cooperating broker or the buyer, the seller that we're trying to work with. Um, and the satisfaction of being able to see that benefit a family. And for me, probably the biggest, if there was going to be an aha, was when I dealt with a family who mom had passed away, mom and dad had the house built, so they lived in the home for 40 some years, almost 50
Wow.
years. Had the home built, mom had passed away, dad was needing to go into assisted living, and I helped the family navigate that whole thing. And they were just so grateful, and have to this day are still really good friends. We got dad into assisted living in a memory care unit, and he actually only lived for a couple months after that. But just helping them to navigate all of that, the uh, because of his dementia and things like that, we had to work with power of attorney. We had to get somebody in there who could help with the estate sale, and so we were talking. This was like a 2 or 3 month process just to get the home listed, and then to get it under contract. So for me, that was I will never forget standing in actually in the memory care unit with the dad and the two daughters. And I just remember having this real deep sense of satisfaction that this is what it's really about. It's not about the check. It's
Yeah.
really about helping people and helping them navigate some of those transition times in life that can be very very emotional, and just being able to be there for them. And so,
Hmm.
and strangely enough, that's a lot of what I did as a pastor. Deaths, funerals,
Right.
confirmations, counseling couples, or individuals. So there's a lot of similarities in these two careers.
Wow. That's I never really thought of it that way, but I can see it now. How it would be satisfying helping uh, older people or newbies getting into a new place as well, starting out
Right.
in life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for you, Ron.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks, Dan.
encouraging. And I'm finding out more and more as I interview people too that a lot of them are saying if they've been in the business for a while, in their business for a while, that it's often more about the people and not that much about the money anymore.
Right.
You reach a
That is
certain
so true.
level where your priorities will change a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
If you take care of people, good things just come your way, and
mhm.
life will take care of you, and people will take care of you.
Right
And
on.
I just really believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. How has the culture or the environment of your office evolved over the years?
So Keller Williams is actually the third firm I've been at. I started with GMAC. Of course, everything collapsed, and in 2010, GMAC went away. So I ended up having to find another office to work with, and I ended up going to an independent brokerage, Ken Piletsky with Community Real Estate Group, and he had been with Coldwell Banker for years and years and years. Decided to open his own office, so I was with Ken for 5 years, and really enjoyed that. Learned a lot of construction, a lot of working with a builder. At that time, he was working with Stonecrest Builders, and then came to Keller Williams. Oh man, 6 years ago now. It's hard to believe. Over 6 years ago. And Keller Williams was just getting started, and so it was a brand new office, not very many agents. So I got to get in on the ground floor and watch that grow. And of course, with anything that grows, there's a lot of growing pains, and a lot of stretching and growing. And I started out as an agent, and then got my managing broker's license, and was asked to be managing broker, and became the designated broker almost 3 years ago. Um, and and there's a lot that has changed, but particularly with our firm, I think that what has changed is the whole learning of how a brokerage needs to grow. We all started out not knowing anything, um, which is kind of freeing in a way, in that you can try a bunch of stuff because nobody knows how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, there's no map, right?
So, yeah, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. So we've made a lot of mistakes, but we've also learned a lot, and have grown a lot, both as leaders and as a firm. I think it's probably the biggest thing in the last 6.5 years, that I have noticed is there's been a huge shift in how firms are structuring their business models. We were kind of a disruptor when we came into the Tri-City market, and with how we did commission splits, allowing teams, that was a huge thing. Now that's not that big of a thing anymore. A lot of firms have teams. A lot of them have changed their commission splits. In fact, Keller Williams is probably not the best deal in town right now if you were only looking at commission splits. And there's other business models out there, flat fee models and things like that. So I think that has been the biggest, as well as not only the business model, but also technology has radically changed how we do real estate.
Yeah, that's actually my next question is, what technological advancements have had the most significant impact on your daily work?
Pretty much everything. So when I got in, now this is not too long ago. I mean, this is not even 15 years ago. When I first got licensed in 2010, I just took my coursework in 2009, got licensed in 2010. Back then, you couldn't deliver a contract by email.
Right.
We had to either fax it or hand deliver it. And you probably remember, Dan, fax machines weren't all that reliable.
I do remember. I remember even before that, before fax machines, I was actually selling real estate in Hawaii, and they would not accept a fax signature originally.
Oh no, it had to be wet signed.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we would use FedEx overnight. Back and forth documents to the mainland overnight, back and forth. And I remember what a big deal it was when they finally decided they would accept facsimile signatures as legal documents.
Right.
That was like, oh my God, I'm going to save so much money now in FedEx expenses.
Well, I just remember being frustrated with the fax machine. So, here in the Tri-Cities, it was just as easy just to drive it across town.
Right.
So, you were dropping off contracts at the title and escrow company, or dropping off contracts at the other real estate company that you're working with, the cooperating broker and cooperating brokerage firm. So there was none of that, right? And we weren't allowed to do electronic signatures. DocuSign is a big thing now. That everything had to be wet signed. Mm-hmm. So there's been just this huge transit, and I don't know, whether it's all been good. We don't see each other much anymore. We don't have, I think, as close a personal communication as we used to. But that to me has been one of the biggest things, is just the whole how we communicate. Emails, electronic signatures, everything now is PDF back and forth. Now when I got started, and you probably remember, your designated broker had a thick file, right? And that, at least for my designated broker, all those sheets better be in order, right?
Right.
And he had a checkoff list at the front of the file folder, and then that was handed in to him, and he checked it off. If there was anything missing, that went back to you, and you had to fill in whatever. Mm-hmm. And then that was kept in a file cabinet. We had storage units.
Right.
Because you have to keep contracts for a minimum of 3 years, but for civil lawsuits longer than that. So now everything's online. Mm-hmm. Nobody that I know of is keeping paper contracts.
No.
Anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. This instantaneous communication has been a real boon.
Yeah.
You can get a hold of the buyer or the seller or their broker or the escrow agent or the bank, the lender, at the drop of a hat.
Right.
That didn't used to be the case at all. It was a waiting game, right?
Right. Very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you could share a memorable story or experience from your early years that sort of contrasts how things are now to how they were then.
Um, I think I think it goes back to that communication piece. There were a lot of meetings that took place, in office lobbies and things like that as you're handing off documents and papers. And It seemed to me, and maybe this might be this is just my experience, but it seemed like to me there was much more cooperation between agents because we were much more in each other's face and saw each other versus now I dealt with some agents I've never seen,
Right.
other than a text message or an email or maybe an occasional phone call. I couldn't pick them out in a crowd if I saw them.
Right.
Uh, and I think that also changes the dynamic of the cooperative relationship because when I've been in front of somebody, I've had personal interaction with them, and now they need help or something gets dropped or whatever. I think there was a lot more grace involved
Hmm.
because there was that more of that personal dynamic and there was more of an allowance to let me take care of that.
Hmm.
And you were much more on a relational basis than just a pure business basis. And it
Right.
feels like, and again, this just might be me, but it feels like we are much more transactional in our relationships. Text messages, emails, maybe a phone call if you got to. It just depends on your. Um, and and there's not that personal care that I think that we once had in our industry. So for me, that's the biggest thing. I I'll never forget being in a driveway. My with a listing agent, we're supposed to be closing. My buyers are packed up and ready to move in, and her place is just not. Her sellers are. It was a widow. The husband had died, and we're having a hard time. And I'll never forget during this whole process, we were going back and forth, and we're standing in the driveway, and she's breaking down. Her dog had died. She just put her dad in the hospital because he had some medical issue and things like that. And but previous to that, we had been face to face a couple different times talking with each other, and it was like, you know what? Let me just take care of this. You go home, take care of your dad. Sorry about your dog, and we're just going to get it done. And I'll never forget that, and just the gratitude that she had after that about me willing to step in and take over. And I suppose she could have called somebody at her office. She was with one of the larger brokerages in town, but just the fact that we had that kind of personal connection,
Hmm.
I think really helped. I don't know that would happen as readily today in today's environment, the way things seem to work. And again, that could be just me. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like we've got that personal connection like we used to.
Yeah, I would have to agree, Ron. I think it has become a little bit more impersonal, and people aren't in the office as much either. They do everything
Right.
remotely, so you just
Right.
don't have that sense of community and camaraderie that you had when everybody was in the office every day.
Right.
You know,
I totally
taking
agree
care of
with that,
business.
Dan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's one thing we've lost. The internet has provided a loss, but it has definitely sort of diminished that human touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. It definitely has made it much more challenging to keep that the human connection part of our
Hmm.
our transactions and our relationships in the industry, and particularly when things become challenging. Which you're in real estate, that almost always there's going to be something that's going to be challenging the transaction, whether that's coming to terms or agreeing on repairs or requests for repairs or whatever that might be, or like the example I gave, right down to the day of closing and trying to get everybody in the right places so that we can hand off the keys to the property.
Yeah. You know, I think that's sort of turning the corner a little bit now because talking to some other realtors, it seems like that they're really uh, concerned about developing community more,
Yeah,
and they're using it quite a bit as uh, to forward their careers, as
yeah.
a
And I
certain
think
a
that I
certain
think that's
pace.
a good thing. And I do think you're right. I think that going through COVID, we got really disconnected, but I do think there's more of a hunger for that connection.
Hmm.
So I'm really good to see. I'm really glad to see more of those networking events taking place in our real estate industry, not just in our office, but also interpersonal. Uh, like I was just at a broker's open, and there must have been 50 people there, and they were just all glad to see each other. So
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
I think that is returning and is a good thing for us.
Yeah, yeah. COVID put a huge distance between realtors and their clients. I mean,
Yeah,
I remember selling a number of properties during COVID when I'd never met the client. I didn't even meet the client until the final walkthrough.
right. Yeah,
Everything was remote.
yeah. Isn't that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a
That was
strange
that
experience.
was strange. Yeah, yeah. You're walking through with your little your camera, and the
Right,
stabilizer, and doing a video walkthrough for the client who's in North Carolina or somewhere.
right.
It's
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah. It was. Yeah.
Okay. Well, moving on here. I was just wondering how have your personal goals and motivations shifted throughout your career?
Um, That's a great question. I think that when you're first getting started as a young agent, you're really worried about like building your business. You know, I'm kind of at the place to where everything has really shifted about taking care of my sphere. So I've got a pretty large sphere of past clients and friends and things. And so my focus has shifted more from the marketing, advertising, cold calling, trying to build my base or my sphere, my database, to really focusing on just taking care of my people and staying connected with the people that I know. For me, that has been a big shift over the last 5 6 years, ever since I came to Keller Williams. And probably some of that was just um, uh, recognizing that that really is my strength. I was trying to do business the way everybody else was doing business. I was trying to do business how other people were telling me how to do business.
Hmm. Hmm.
But really I really came around to realize that my strength is just that personal connection with people. And typically, if I go to a listing appointment, even with people I don't know, um, I usually walk out of there with the listing simply because I've built rapport with the people. And so I have just learned to harness that and focus on that, and that's really what has has built my business. And so most of my business really is based on referrals.
Hmm.
I get very few calls just out of the blue. It's always people who are referring to me or people who have been referred to me, or somebody who calls and says, I just had this, in fact, an agent across the state who knows me because I'm involved in the state association as well, and has a client who's moving to the Tri-Cities, and they got a hold of me. So for me, that's been the biggest shift in my personal business.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's I'm hearing that a lot too from people who have been in their business for a while. It's that the feeling of how great it is when your database becomes your community.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great
So
way of putting it, Dan. I love that. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. When your database becomes your community. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out as a realtor in the industry today, based on your experience?
Um, uh, Three things. Number one, uh, learn contracts and contract language. Um, and probably this comes from being a designated broker, managing broker, and overseeing the activities of other agents, and their interaction with agents on the other side. It's amazing to me how many practitioners in our industry really don't know contracts that well. And so I emphasize to new agents, your first responsibility is to know contracts inside and out and to learn them very, very well. The second is learn how you are going to do business. That was the mistake I made. I tried doing it like everybody else, right? And which is interesting. It just dawned on me because when I was in college, I did the same thing, right? I went to college. I'm looking around and I'm trying to learn, studying for tests how he does it or how he does it, and it wasn't until my junior year that I found out how Ron Almberg learns and retains information and can recall it. And when that light bulb came on, I went from a mediocre student to almost a straight A student. And I just connected the dots there just now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came into real estate the same way. I'm looking around trying to figure out. So, I did it, my designated broker, GMAC, and then I followed Ken Piletsky and, try to follow his, and there's a couple other people in our office. And so find out how you are wired and develop a business model around that. What's your passions? How do you connect with people? How do you communicate with people? How do you relate with people? And lean into that and build your business model around that. So that would be the second thing that I would highly recommend. The third is network. Get out there and meet people. Get involved in nonprofit groups. Get involved in, I don't care what it is, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary, the Boys and Girls Clubs. Go to Brokers Opens. Be at your office meetings. If you are not talking directly to clients or people in your sphere, you need to be talking to and networking with and building relationships who are going to help you build your business. Title and escrow people, contractors, lenders. There should never be a time in your calendar where you're not having an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody for a couple different reasons. Number one, they're going to be your referral partners and build your sphere. But number two, you're going to learn a ton from them just by talking to lenders, title and escrow people, other realtors. Meet people outside your office. Go to those Brokers Opens and introduce yourself and try. In fact, a couple of the new realtors, I've challenged them. You're going to take 5 business cards with you. Take 5 of your business cards. You're going to go to Brokers Open. And you're going to leave that Brokers Opens with 5 business cards of 5 other people that you met at that Brokers Open. You're going to exchange your card 5 times. I had one agent who was just, it was very evident that they were not a people, they were not extrovert. And I'm not either, but I've learned to be. And so I reduced it to 3. Take 3 business cards. You got to shake the hands of 3 people and exchange a business card with
them. Yeah. Well, and also the other part of that is if when you exchange those cards, you probably don't want to exchange them with other realtors. You want to make sure you're exchanging them with a lender, an appraiser, whoever's out there.
Right.
Yeah, not just other realtors, because you're all looking for the same business.
Well, for me, part of it was just engaging people in a situation like that and introducing yourself and learning to engage people. Particularly for a lot of younger people, it seems like they don't have quite those interpersonal skills. Some of it is, I think, is because so much of their world is online. And so going and meeting people and engaging people in a public space like that, it doesn't seem to me like a lot of them are really um, have experience in that or able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, a lot of our younger agents too, it's very intimidating to walk into a group of agents, particularly if they're, older guys like us,
Mm-hmm.
and so, learning to step out of that comfort zone and get into a place of uncomfortability and just meet people, right?
Mm-hmm.
If
Right.
you can do that in a place where you've got 50 people from in around your industry, you're going to be able to do very well at an open house where strangers are coming in. But
Right.
if you can't do that in a place where you're supposed to kind of know people, how are
Right.
you going to do that with people who walk in the front door and you don't even know how to engage them?
Right. Right. And I think one of the probably the best skills at an open house or a broker's open or any of those networking events is listening. I mean,
Yeah,
I find so many people. You walk up to them and you start a conversation, and if you let them, they'll go on endlessly talking about themselves and their job. It's a wonderful thing because you can learn so much.
you can learn
I
so
think
much.
one of the best quotes I ever heard. I can't recall who said it right now, but it was I never learned anything when I was talking.
I like that.
you
Yeah,
know, yeah,
that's
and
so
it
true.
it just kind of expresses it so well. It just open up and let somebody talk to you,
Yeah,
and the rest of it will take care of itself, really.
yeah, that's so
Okay.
true.
Yeah. And so what is, if you could just give a new realtor just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, Find a mentor.
Okay.
Yeah, find somebody that you can connect with who's gonna who you can shadow because just as you pointed out, you're gonna learn so much just by hanging around them, listening how they engage, what questions they ask, how they do listing appointments, how they do buyers consultations, what do they do in an open house, if they're working with a builder, how do they work with a builder, right? You will learn so much faster than just doing it by yourself. So find a mentor, find somebody who you're going to be able to sit in with, even if it's just sitting in and listening to their phone conversations. You will learn so many questions to ask and how to have conversations. So that would be my number one recommendation: is find somebody you can hang with and that you can learn from, and also who's going to hold you accountable, that you're going to set goals with. Even if it is like you're gonna meet three people at an office.
Right, right. You got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. That's right.
Well, that's great advice. To get a mentor. A number of people that I've interviewed recently have said the same thing, that they wouldn't be where they are today if they hadn't hooked up with someone who really held their hand along the way and acted as a
Yeah,
mentor.
that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. For me, that was Ken Poletsky. When I
Mm-hmm.
went to his office, he was working with Stonecroft. I learned so much about construction and development and working with a builder. That whole side of it was just huge. And then listening to him on his phone conversations and how he interacted with people at open houses and things. Um, yeah, that was, and he was really good at checking in and holding me accountable for some of the goals I'd set and what I wanted. And then he also dragged me along. He's one of the reasons why I got involved in our local Realtor Association, was because he dragged me along and says you're either at the table or you're on the menu. What do you want to
Right.
be?
There you go. I like that one. Yeah. At the table or on the menu. That's perfect. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What's for lunch? I hope it's not me.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
So,
And the truth is both at the local level and the state level, they are having conversations that highly impact our industry and how we are going to do business. And you can either be a part of that discussion or you can just wait and find out what the result of that conversation was
right,
later. So
right.
I always credit Ken Poletsky for getting me involved in pushing me in that direction. So it's been a great experience, a huge learning experience. I've learned so much from other realtors just across the state and as well as locally.
Okay. So one final question here. if you had it to do all over again, would you?
Yeah, yeah, I would. I mean, certainly there have been a lot of challenges. There have been a lot of times where I've wondered, maybe I could just be a Walmart door greeter. Or is there a job where I could just, clock in at 9, clock out at 5, and not have to worry about anything after 5 o'clock or on the weekends? There have been those moments. I don't want to mislead anybody. But taken as a whole, overall, it has been incredibly rewarding. And like we mentioned earlier, it's more about the relationships and about the people. I mean, yeah, I have done very well in real estate, and I've appreciated that. One of the reasons I got involved in real estate is after 25 years of being a pastor, I didn't have any retirement because I pastored little tiny churches.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed to do something to start putting away money for retirement, for savings. And so this has really allowed me to do that. But I wouldn't change anything. I've had some just incredible experiences, incredible opportunities to meet people, great leadership opportunities to grow in leadership. And for me, the most rewarding is, not only my clients, but also a lot of the agents, or a lot of people like yourself, a lot of people I've met across the industry. They don't, in other offices and other firms. I've got people just everywhere that are just a huge blessing to me, and I would not have had that experience if I was, just at your 9 to 5 job, putting one widget on top of another and then going home. So,
yeah, that's not really a life, in my opinion. That's not living.
No, it's not.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that you would do it again, because not everybody has that mindset. Not everybody is happy with their career. So consider yourself doubly blessed. So I want to thank you again for coming on to the podcast here, Ron. It's
thank you.
Been a pleasure having you.
Fun, Dan. Yeah,
been lots of good insights here. I knew there would be. You've been at it a long time and have been very successful, and I congratulate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Dan.